Hey Gengar gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we talk about the necessity of protecting and properly storing and insuring your Pokemon card collection. And in today's video, we're going to go over a story that recently broke the news about a store that was robbed of $50,000 in Pokemon cards. Today's video is important for a couple of reasons, and before we get started reviewing the article, I figured it would be important to kind of highlight those things. For many of us, Pokemon collecting is a hobby, right? It's something we do for fun, it's something that we don't necessarily think of as revenue generating. But the truth of the matter is, for the fair majority of us, especially those individuals who are invested in vintage stuff or, anything necessarily older, there is a likelihood that over the past 2 years, your collection has, doubled, tripled, quadrupled. Mine, has even gone up more than that in some instances. And what's important to realize is that as a result of this, there is a legitimate amount of concern that should be considered when you go about thinking how and where you store your Pokemon cards. And today's story that is brought to us from this local news station kind of highlights the importance of considering this type of stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're going all the way to Springfield, Missouri, where Game Master on South Glenstone is hoping to find two people who broke into their store last week. So Game Master is a LGS, or a local game store, and he opened up in April of 1985, and then 1 week ago, two burglars broke into his beloved business and robbed him overnight. Now, the article goes on to sort of explain some of the nuances of, by the way, they were caught full on surveillance camera, so there's not really much of a question here. It's more so just like the audacity of you. And then he goes on to say how they walked in, it looked like they knew exactly where they were going, and then they basically went straight to the Pokemon card section and smashed open the counter and grabbed a few things. Now, here's what was actually stolen. They stole a base set unlimited booster box, a Evolutions booster box, 9 EX Sandstorm booster packs, 20 Fossil booster packs, 2 Roaring Skies booster boxes, and 1 Darkness Ablaze theme deck. My random 2 cents and thoughts on some of this stuff. Obviously, yeah, I wouldn't blame you for stealing the base set unlimited booster box. At its highest, it was going for like 30 grand. The Evolutions booster box is an easy $1,000, so again, I get it. Even the booster packs, right? Vintage stuff. Apparently in the video, you'll see that they grab the booster boxes and then they turn around and then circle back and grab the booster pack. So I guess they kind of realized they were valuable enough to be stolen. I would, conservatively place the Sandstorm packs at like 200 each, and then the Fossil booster packs, assuming they were unlimited, is probably going to be like 200-300 each as well. I don't really follow the exact pricing trends on these particular sets, so I might not be 100% correct about that, but I think you're right in that area. They're certainly not going to be $1,000 booster packs is what I'm trying to get at. The 2 Roaring Skies booster boxes, again, probably $1,000 combined, maybe. And then this is what gets me, though, the Darkness Ablaze theme deck. Like, imagine one of the robbers turned around and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and grab that theme deck, and then that's when the cops showed up. Can you imagine that $13.99 MSRP and something you're probably likely going to be able to find on every store shelf for the foreseeable future is the reason you got caught? Now, as a random bit of update to this, at the time this article was written, there was like, hey, I don't necessarily know if anything's going to come of this, but if you have any information, call the Springfield Police Department. One random thing is that from what I hear, the case is progressing and they are investigating a tip that came in, and then that's going to lead to the identity of one of the 2 people who robbed the store. So there may actually be some pretty swift justice for this stuff. Now, in the grand scheme of things, all of this got me thinking, because currently I store my stuff in, safety deposit boxes. Some stuff is stored in a safe, like some of the lesser expensive but still important stuff. And, I've tried my best to review and identify insurance companies that will insure against the possibility of water damage, insure against the possibility of fire damage, etc., etc. But what I find fascinating is that obviously as Pokemon has taken off over the past couple of years, it's obviously become more and more important to think about this. One of my favorite YouTubers is named Twice Baked Jake, and I'm sure tons of folks watch him, but I love his content because it has sort of that investment flair to it, similar to this channel in many aspects. And Jake went about telling a story about how over the past 2 years, he too has seen the type of increase where he just didn't want the risk associated with owning that much Pokemon card product that was worth that much. So he sold like half of his collection, like stuff that was dispensable, and he went ahead and bought a house with some of the funds that he generated. And that's amazing for him. I'm really happy for him. And obviously it highlights the good aspects of the Pokemon hobby, meaning, you know, you can really take legitimate life steps by, you know, collecting casually, and that's awesome. But that just goes to highlight some of the nuances of the way you should think about your collection. Even if you do it just for collecting, and even if you really just want to have an amazing collection out for display, you need to be considerate of the idea that, hey, some of the stuff is worth a serious amount of money. And as a result of that, you may then need to build in those types of protections into the way that these things are shipped, the way that these things are stored, the way that these things are displayed. So for example, purchasing a glass shelf from IKEA might not cut it anymore, because, you know, even if you bought that Sandstorm booster box, it's probably a $15,000 box, or at least upwards of $9,000. And on that merit alone, I think by default, you should probably have that under lock and key. And then same concept when it comes to, you know, heavens forbid, a Deoxys booster box or a first edition base set box. Again, doesn't matter what you purchased it at, but you might now need to consider, hey, how do I store this stuff in a safe system or in a safe capacity where I know for a fact it's not going to get damaged, stolen, or otherwise destroyed in one way, shape, or form. Obviously, for these folks at this local game store, they have the surveillance cameras, and this stuff is probably actively up for sale, and that's why they choose to display it behind a glass display case. And I'm sure that display case, like many others, has a lock and key system so that no one can just open it up. That's why these thieves had to break in at night and then also break the glass in order to get to the items. But it's just interesting because in the grand scheme of things, I wonder how much more or how much less could have been done to protect this stuff. And it's something to consider for the future. You know, I've often thought about when I complete my EX collection, how it's going to be displayed. And recently I've come to the decision that it may actually not be displayed ever at all. I may get it all out one day and take a nice picture, put it on Instagram. After that, I'm disassembling the entire display. I am locking each of these boxes up. I'm probably going to separate them and store them in 2 separate secured locations or lock boxes. And then I'll just never look at them again because frankly, the thought of displaying them is really scary. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, right? So similar to this game store, a burglary could happen, and if all these boxes are in one location, it makes for a very convenient theft. The other thing is risk of damage. So if a pipe breaks, if a fire breaks out, if something falls over, all these things can happen and destroy a collection. And these collections, again, are not just going to be $2,000, $5,000, $6,000. These are now climbing up and approaching the $100,000 mark in some situations. The other thing that you can possibly do if you don't want to necessarily deal with the idea of, building out a really good defense system for your cards, meaning, triple locking your doors and having a fire suppression system. Again, all this stuff is stuff that some legitimate places really probably have. I can imagine PSA has a lot of that type of stuff just built into their entire system. And fun fact, there are some libraries that contain such old, vintage, and rare items that they don't have a fire suppression system like a sprinkler, because if there was ever a fire, the sprinkler would ruin the books in the library. Instead, what those libraries do is they would actually seal up and suck the oxygen out. So the people in the library would theoretically not have oxygen, but so too would the fire not have oxygen. And without the fire, without the oxygen, the fire would stop burning. So that's how some libraries have actually come about dealing with the threat of fire. And similarly, in your home, you could invest in sprinklers, you could invest in some sort of wacky contraption to contain the fire. Same thing with pipes. You could use things like water pressure meters to determine if there's a spike in water pressure that might be indicative of a burst pipe. But again, these are very expensive and highly specialized equipment that your normal residential house may not even have. And so, you might end up with a $500,000 collection and might end up spending $250,000 investing and protecting it. Another option that you often have is something like a vault. So, some of us have invested pretty significantly, may I add, in secured off-site locations. So typically that means like a safety deposit box, a bank vault, or a vault offered by like PWCC. And basically they have a huge warehouse that is constantly monitored, guarded. Again, it has many of the different types of fire suppression systems and flood protection systems that I've mentioned in this video. And the idea there is that, your stuff is safe and you don't have to deal with the chance of something happening in your home. Because all of your stuff is going to be safely secured off-site, and it's 100% protected against fire, against water, against gas, against all that kind of stuff. And finally, but not least, another thing you could consider is insurance. But again, one thing that is really tough about insurance with collectibles is that it has to be highly specialized. So if you've ever gotten the itch and called up like Geico or not Nationstar, one of those other like Travelers, right? If you call up one of those insurance companies, they will often not know how to underwrite the types of risks unique to collectibles. And so there are very few insurance companies out there that will do a legitimate write-up and underwrite a insurance policy that will recognize Pokemon cards as a collectible and, more importantly, insure them for their full value. I have heard of stories where, folks are getting, XY error cases and then a pipe breaks or fire breaks out and they lose some part of their collection. When they call up the insurance company and they say, hey, if they say it's a collection, they say, oh, sorry, we don't write insurance policies for collections, therefore it's not covered. If you file it under just casualty loss, meaning you just say, hey, there was, my computer got wet and it needs to be replaced. Okay. Oh, and I had some Pokemon cards get destroyed as well. Oh, how much? Well, I bought it for $600. It's now worth $2,000. They'll pay you the $600, so they'll only pay MSRP. But imagine you had a first edition base set box. Again, these insurance companies wouldn't necessarily recognize the vintage nature and market appreciation of the box, and they may research it, find out MSRP was like $104.99, and give you that much for the box. So that's why insurance can be a double-edged sword, because you can't just assume that your homeowner's insurance or renter's insurance covers this stuff. And even if it does, you need to be very, very clear about understanding what your insurance is underwriting, and more importantly, how much insurance is actually given to your collectibles versus anything else. Oftentimes, the best way of going about this is going to be getting a very specific insurance for your collectibles valued at full and total value. But yeah, the only good news is that I'm pretty sure Game Master is going to be in a good spot. I'm sure they have insurance, and again, as a local game store, they probably have insurance that's going to specifically pay them the value of these items. I hope they get the full $13.99 for the Darkness Ablaze theme deck. And then again, with the amount of cameras we have nowadays, I'm pretty sure something's going to pop up where they're going to identify some of these people. The good news is that it seems like the folks moved with the type of information like they were in the store during the day, meaning hopefully someone spotted them or saw them, and the authorities can use the necessary law enforcement techniques to figure it out, match these folks, and then get them to justice. But other than that, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. This is a scary topic, and it's one of those topics that's kind of gross to talk about because no one ever really wants to talk about it, and yet at the same time it's very important to talk about, understand, and perceive these risks as real, because again, a lot of us, like, just casually have been amassing collections that are now worth a lot more than we paid for them. And on the pure merit of that alone, I think this is a justifiable consideration for all of us. You might have bought something for $100 now. It might be worth $1,000. I think that alone, it at least merits a conversation about this stuff. Just because you have $1,000 worth of stuff, I'm not saying to go pay $100 a year in insurance premiums to insure against possible loss of your collectibles. I think that's a bit exorbitant. But, once you start approaching a certain number, you might want to consider how you go about storing this stuff and protecting this stuff. And if you'd like to learn more about that, and you think that would be a good idea for a video and something you would want to watch, feel free to let me know that down below in the comments, and I will go ahead and make a video on some of the ways you can go ahead and start storing your stuff in more secure manners. Now, with all that said, as always, I appreciate your viewership. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but you chose to hang out with me, and that is much appreciated. As always, the best way to support the channel and help it grow and help me to continue to better my content is to leave feedback down below in the comments if you have any, and also subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Other than that, friends, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you all are having an amazing Saturday, and we will talk soon. Peace.